What skills you need for critical thinking. What is critical thinking? Critical thinking is the ability to think clearly and rationally, understanding the logical connection between ideas. Critical thinking has been the subject of much debate and thought since the time of early Greek philosophers such as Plato and Socrates, and has continued to be a subject of discussion into the modern age, for example the ability to recognize fake news. Critical thinking might be described as the ability to engage in reflective and independent thinking. In essence, critical thinking requires you to use your ability to reason. It is about being an active learner rather than a passive recipient of information. Critical thinkers rigorously question ideas and assumptions rather than accepting them at face value. They will always seek to determine whether the ideas, arguments, and findings represent the entire picture and are open to finding that they do not. Critical thinkers will identify, analyze, and solve problems systematically rather than by intuition or instinct. Someone with critical thinking skills can understand the links between ideas, determine the importance and relevance of arguments and ideas, recognize, build, and appraise arguments, identify inconsistencies and errors in reasoning, approach problems in a consistent and systematic way, reflect on the justification of their own assumptions, beliefs, and values. Critical thinking is thinking about things in certain ways so as to arrive at the best possible solution in the circumstances that the thinker is aware of. In more everyday language, it is a way of thinking about whatever is presently occupying your mind so that you come to the best possible conclusion. Critical thinking is a way of thinking about particular things at a particular time. It is not the accumulation of facts and knowledge or something that you can learn once and then use in that form forever, such as the 9 times table you learn and use in school. The skills we need for critical thinking, the skills that we need in order to be able to think critically, are varied and include observation, analysis, interpretation, reflection, evaluation, inference, explanation, problem solving, and decision making. Specifically, we need to be able to think about a topic or issue in an objective and critical way. Identify the different arguments there are in relation to a particular issue. Evaluate a point of view to determine how strong or valid it is. Recognize any weaknesses or negative points that there are in the evidence or argument. Notice what implications there might be behind a statement or argument. Provide structured reasoning and support for an argument that we wish to make. __, the critical thinking process. You should be aware that none of us think critically all the time. Sometimes we think in almost any way but critically, for example when our self-control is affected by anger, grief, or joy, or when we are feeling just plain bloody-minded. On the other hand, the good news is that, since our critical thinking ability varies according to our current mindset, most of the time we can learn to improve our critical thinking ability by developing certain routine activities and applying them to all problems that present themselves. Once you understand the theory of critical thinking, improving your critical thinking skills takes persistence and practice. Try this simple exercise to help you to start thinking critically. Think of something that someone has recently told you. Then ask yourself the following questions: who said it? Someone you know? Someone in a position of authority or power? Does it matter who told you this? What did they say? Did they give facts or opinions? Did they provide all the facts? Did they leave anything out? Where did they say it? Was it in public or in private? Did other people have a chance to respond and provide an alternative account? When did they say it? Was it before, during, or after an important event? Is timing important? Why did they say it? Did they explain the reasoning behind their opinion? Were they trying to make someone look good or bad? How did they say it? Were they happy or sad, angry or indifferent? Did they write it or say it? Could you understand what was said? __, what are you aiming to achieve? One of the most important aspects of critical thinking is to decide what you are aiming to achieve and then make a decision based on a range of possibilities. Once you have clarified that aim for yourself, you should use it as the starting point in all future situations requiring thought and, possibly, further decision-making. Where needed, make your workmates, family, or those around you aware of your intention to pursue this goal. You must then discipline yourself to keep on track until changing circumstances mean you have to revisit the start of the decision-making process. However, there are things that get in the way of simple decision-making. We all carry with us a range of likes and dislikes, learned behaviors and personal preferences developed throughout our lives. They are the hallmarks of being human. A major contribution to ensuring we think critically is to be aware of these personal characteristics, preferences and biases and make allowance for them when considering possible next steps, whether they are at the pre-action consideration stage or as part of a rethink caused by unexpected or unforeseen impediments to continued progress. The more clearly we are aware of ourselves, our strengths and weaknesses, the more likely our critical thinking will be productive. The benefit of foresight. Perhaps the most important element of thinking critically is foresight. Almost all decisions we make and implement don't prove disastrous if we find reasons to abandon them. However, our decision-making will be infinitely better and more likely to lead to success if, when we reach a tentative conclusion, we pause and consider the impact on the people and activities around us. The elements needing consideration are generally numerous and varied. In many cases, consideration of one element from a different perspective will reveal potential dangers in pursuing our decision. For instance, moving a business activity to a new location may improve potential output considerably, but it may also lead to the loss of skilled workers if the distance moved is too great. Which of these is the more important consideration? Is there some way of lessening the conflict? These are the sort of problems that may arise from incomplete critical thinking, a demonstration perhaps of the critical importance of good critical thinking. Critical thinking and fake news. Since the 2016 US presidential election, the phrase fake news has become standard currency. But what does the term actually mean, and how can you distinguish fake from real news? The bad news is that fake news is often very believable, and it is extremely easy to get caught out. This page explains how you can apply critical thinking techniques to news stories to reduce the chances of believing fake news, or at least starting to understand that not everything you read is true. What is fake news? Fake news is news stories that are either completely untrue, or do not contain all the truth, with a view to deliberately misleading readers. Fake news became prominent during the US election, with supporters of both sides tweeting false information in the hope of influencing voters. But it is nothing new. Fake news is not articles on satirical or humorous websites, or related publications, that make a comment on the news by satirizing them, because this is intended to inform and amuse, not misinform. Anything obvious that everyone already knows, often described using the caption, "That's not news," or an article whose content you disagree with. The deliberate intention of fake news to mislead is crucial. Why is fake news a problem? If fake news has been around for so long, why is it suddenly a problem? The answer is that social media means that credible fake news stories can spread very quickly. In the worst cases, they can have major effects. There are suggestions that fake news influenced the 2016 US election. In another case, a gunman opened fire at a pizzeria that had been falsely but widely reported as being the center of a pedophile ring involving prominent politicians. In less critical cases, fake news reports can result in distress or reputational damage for the people or organizations mentioned in the articles. It is, therefore, important to be alert to the potential for reports to be fake, and to ensure that you are not party to their spread. Spotting fake news. Unfortunately, it is not always easy to spot false news. Sometimes, a story may be obviously false. For example, it may contain typos or spelling mistakes, or formatting errors. Like phishing emails, however, some fake news stories are a lot more subtle than that. Facebook famously issued a guide to spotting fake news in May 2017. Its advice ranges from the obvious to the much less intuitive. Useful tips include: investigate the source, be wary of stories written by unknown sources, and check their website for more information. Stories from reliable news sources, such as national newspapers or broadcasters, are more likely to have been checked and verified. It is also worth looking at the URL, to make sure it is a genuine news organization. Dig deeper, look at the evidence on which the article bases its claims, and check whether they seem credible. If there are no sources given, or the source is an unknown expert or friend of someone concerned, be skeptical. Check whether other, reliable news sources are carrying the story. Sometimes, even otherwise reliable news sources get carried away and forget to do all the necessary checks. But one very good check is to ask whether other reliable sources are also carrying the story. If yes, it is likely to be correct. If not, you should at least be doubtful. Facebook's advice boils down to reading news stories critically. That does not mean looking for their flaws, or criticizing them, although this can be part of critical reading and thinking. Instead, it means applying logic and reason to your thinking and reading, so that you make a sensible judgment about what you are reading. In practice, this means being alert to why the article has been written, and what the author wants you to feel, think, or even do as a result of reading it. Even accurate stories may have been written in a way that is designed to steer you towards a particular point of view or action. For more about this, see our pages on critical thinking and critical reading. A final thought: fake news spreads so fast because we all like the idea of telling people something that they did not already know, something exclusive, and because we want to share our view of the world. It's a bit like gossip. But like false gossip, fake news can harm. Next time, before you click on share or retweet, just take a moment to think about whether the story that you are spreading is likely to be true or not. Even if you think it is true, consider the possible effect of spreading it. Is it going to hurt anyone if it turns out to be false? If so, don't go there. Think before you share. Please subscribe, share and comment.